Hi, Simon.
Hey Lisa, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I just had a nice little lunch from my meal delivery service. I don't want to name names. I've tried a bunch of different ones, but I love this one because it's more like it's a grocery store and it gives you options to filter by if there's like a certain diet that you follow. And then it gives recommended recipes, and then you can look at the ingredients in the recipes. You can decide if you want to swap something out or not.
Right.
And then it also tells you how long each recipe is going to take. And I love it. Or you can just buy things one off.
But you have to
And
prep everything, right? You have to cut
you
it up
do,
or peel it
you
or
do, but they do have things that are pretty easy. So what I had today, for example, it was a chicken that has been sous vide already. So I basically just had to heat it up in a pan. It came with a Korean barbecue sauce and quinoa brown rice that you could either heat it up in a microwave because it's already kind of pre-cooked,
Mhm.
or throw it in the pan with the chicken. So it's pretty easy. But then I have another one where you're chopping up peppers and it's
Right.
assembling tacos, and it has a guacamole and stuff like that. So it's different, but I love it. And I bring this up because today we're going to be talking about websites and the importance of websites. And this one, I feel like it's, while the product is not the website is what kind of sold me on it for now.
Right. Well,
Yeah,
I mean, I think that goes to one of the reasons to have a website, right? Is that it presents your brand, right? So if you have a
definitely.
great web experience, customers can probably assume that they're going to have a great business experience with the product or with the service or whatever, right? But if the website is crappy or non-existent, then right it's suspect, right? Is this a real company? What, how much do they care about
Well,
their business?
it is funny. So yes, and there is an argument for not having your own website, but I think that's a very specific scenario. And I did think of one as you were just sort of saying that, because I do believe that you have to send people somewhere. So you have to have some online presence. Now, the scenario I was thinking of, that my partner and I have a board game and
Right.
we have it built. We have our own website that we can take orders on the website. However, we also sell on Amazon and Walmart, and people are going to Amazon or Walmart because they don't know, what is this website? Is this even real? And
Right.
Amazon and Walmart are trusted more. So I do see sometimes there are people they use another platform, or like Etsy, I think we've used as an example, and
I
that
think
platform is what get used. Yeah.
I think if you can build, like, Etsy to me is like building a boutique for your product, and that
Mm.
is like that makes sense, right? You're making custom clothing, furniture, whatever, home goods, things like that, and having it have Etsy be your destination. I think the key thing is what you said earlier, which is you have to have a place to send people. So if you're going to do any other advertising, social media, even if you're going to co-market with somebody else, like another company, people are ultimately going to want to Google you, right? And so you need a website for supporting search, right? And supporting your
Hmm.
brand and allowing you to have more control, more customization than, let's say, what some of these other platforms let you have.
Yes. And you just made me think of yet another example, which is it's mostly marketing. You and I have gone back and forth on, do we want to have one or not? And then ultimately we decided that we did want to have a website because we could have a little bit more control and not just have a platform where we can embed all of the episodes of the show, but other things like over time, creating resources that we can have, having a way for people to contact us or
Right.
ask a question and that kind of thing, which we didn't have that kind of customization or control.
Well, and ultimately, if people say, "Oh, I heard about Simon and Lisa's, it's mostly marketing," and they Google that, we should pop up, right? Our website should pop up, right? And I think that sort of speaks to another aspect of a website, which is you should have your own domain name. Yeah, it sounds daunting, but it's pretty inexpensive on a monthly basis to have your own brand.
But
So
yeah.
It's mostly marketing.com. It's one of the first things we did is making sure we could secure that. And then we hooked it up. We registered it through one system, what they call domain registry. And then we transferred it to another where our website is hosted. And it literally took half a day.
What are some things that people should think about when they're choosing where they want to have their website hosted? Describe the difference between securing a domain and the language around that, and then versus your site hosting partner. What's the difference?
Domain is just the URL, the thing that people type into the browser, that whatever those words are, www dot something, that's your domain name, right? And some people buy, especially big companies, buy domains just to protect their brand. They may even buy misspellings,
typos,
or they may buy ones that are not so flattering because they don't want someone else to buy like acmesucks.com, right? So the Acme website actually probably, it would be smart for them to own another domain.
You have simonhunt.com. I have lisaflosnick.com because when we're so famous, we don't want anybody taking over.
My wife has a domain name, and there was a host of like a DIY show with the same name, and they contacted us to buy our domain name, but they offered us $10, like $200, and it literally costs that like to maintain it for like 3 years. So I'm like, no. But
come back when you're serious.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so that's the domain. Let's talk about the web hosting partner.
One thought.
Sure. Yeah.
Domains are country-based. So if you are at all international and listening to this, the way domains work in your country may be different. That's just my disclaimer. And then the other platform piece, the hosting, is the technology that powers the actual presentation of your web pages. So web platforms like WordPress, Squarespace, Wix, even Shopify, you don't need to know code typically to use a lot of these sites, to use most of them. Now, if you want to customize stuff, you need a developer, or we've used AI to write little bits of code for us. It's crazy. That's a whole nother conversation. So the platform is really one of these things when you said, what should I think about? It's like ease of use versus customization. Like, do I just need that landing page? Do I need to capture people's email? Do I need to put up web pages of like marketing?
Well, stop for
brochure?
a second. So even the templates, they kind of cover all the very common scenarios. And I feel like if you're just starting out, that is perfectly fine. And especially if you have a blank slate and you're like, what do I do? It's nice to have a platform that already has these templates. It's like, here's what a product page could look like. Here's what your homepage could look like.
A lot of these popular small business or individual or user platforms, you can buy designs and templates too that are already created, right, for a small fee that other people have. And then you just drop in your own copy, your own images, your own color palette, things like that.
Yep. Actually, that's what I did with Shopify, which is what our game platform is on because it's e-commerce.
Setting up a website doesn't have to be daunting.
Yeah.
And if you think about, okay, I have an idea. I know what my colors are, my brand, or, I know the content. Really, that it comes down to what content do I need on that website? So what does it have to do? In your case, for your board game, you needed content that was commerce enabled, right? You needed people to be able to purchase a product.
Exactly.
But a lot of people just need to market a product, right? Here's a picture of it. Here's a description of it. Here's the features and benefits, the pain points it solves
for. Or they just need to capture names for some reason.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or email addresses.
Right. And there are probably templates that might be better for some industry. Like there are tons of podcast templates that you can use to start creating. So that gets us into what are the core feature content for every website?
Yeah. Every website has a homepage. And when we first started working together a million years ago, I remember you went through an exercise of identifying content or page types. So it's kind of like a page type, like the homepage. The purpose of the homepage was get people to where they want to go. So it was almost like a I don't know what the analogy was that you used.
What we called it a hub or a router page. And
Yeah, because it's not for people to linger. I mean, sometimes
right,
it is if they're like, I don't know who this company is and I want to just sort of get a feel for it. But it usually was they're there to do something. And what is it? Are they there to find out more about your product? So then you have a link off to your products. Is it they want to contact you about something? You have a contact us. Is it about they want to learn more about the leadership team? You've got that. You might need to have a mechanism where customers can contact you
right.
as one or policies. So maybe you need to expose your return policy or your purchase policy or something like that. That could be related to that.
And that's a really good point because ultimately, in this day and age of privacy policies and things like that, pretty much every site that captures names or captures information or even just analytics, you need to have some sort of policy about cookies and things like that. That I think might be another episode that even we need to dig a little more into
Yeah,
because
it's so
that
boring
landscape,
though.
but it's also changes, right?
It does change. You can't have something evergreen. Now, I will say it varies from country to country, state to state, and it depends on the size of your company, what your requirements are. So if you
Right.
I think it's less than 50 as of now in California, if you make less than $50 million a year in annual revenue, you do not need to display the message about displaying cookies. So if
Right.
you make more than $50 million, then you do have to say that in California, if you're
Yeah.
reside in California.
And I was going to say, we've been looking into this for our own site. And I think, there are some third parties where you can license, terms and conditions, have a privacy policy, work with some sort of legal agency that will help you put something together pretty inexpensively instead of hiring a whole law firm and all that.
Yeah. And I want to mention, I know a lot of people that just say, oh, I'm just going to copy and paste something. Well, that's actually not legal, but I know a lot of people do that. Just FYI, just like it's supposed to be specific to your business and you should have an attorney or somebody that
Right.
knows the law. You can, if like maybe you're really versed in it, you don't have to be an attorney, but if you're very versed in it, then you can probably write the language that's specific to you and your organization.
Yep. Agreed.
Okay.
We did,
So yeah, do you want to talk about other like
so
different
once you have sort of that essential pages, you have to think about your platform and how are people going to view your content. And in this day and age, most websites are visited by mobile users, right? So you need to make sure
your
that
phone
your
specifically?
phone, yeah. So it's typically over 50%, and in a lot of cases, it's way more than that. And so it's really important that those templates that you use and the content you provide all works on mobile phone. And I think
And
also,
wait. So when you say works on mobile, it means it's usually more of less about a function. It's layout where
both. Yeah.
I guess true, it could be function too. But let's say so as an example with Christina, where she owns this gymnastics school and she displays a calendar in
Hmm.
a monthly view. But if you look at it on your phone, everything like
Is off.
Wednesday off, like you don't
Yeah,
see it. And so
exactly.
we created it so that if it's in the smaller view, you see what's called an agenda view. So it's literally like a list. But the list isn't great if you're on a larger screen.
It's that ultimately mobile, you need to make sure your content and the experience works. You can't have a tool that only works on desktop, for example, like maybe you have a product selector
Calculator.
or
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
exactly. It's got to fit in that mobile device to work really well. And I think related to that is Google now, if you want to get indexed, which is another reason to have a website, is that people find you in search. They index mobile versions of your site. So if your score for mobile is low, meaning Google thinks that your site isn't as built as well, it's not optimized for a mobile phone or mobile device, they'll discount you as far as how you show up in search results and things like that. That was a change they probably made 3 or 4 years ago, is to say if your site doesn't work on mobile, and I still have found a few, especially smaller business sites or things where people sort of loved it and left it kind of thing.
Yeah.
Launched it, loved it, launched
Launch,
it, and then left it.
launch and leave. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is not going to show up in search, or if it does, it's going to be at the bottom of the list. So there's
Well,
some.
so you talked about search, so search engine optimization. Then I would also tie it back to another consideration for a feature would be handling blog posts. And I remember when blogs first came out, and there was a writer I was working with at the time, and she said, I feel like blogs are just like garbage that you just rambly thoughts and you have no way to organize it. And it's like, on one hand, I'm like, I could see where she was coming from. But on the other hand, what's great about blog posts, and you can call it something else. So that's why I've encouraged people to call it like news or updates or resources, or like call it something that is really epitomizes what it actually is. And because blog, it just doesn't feel very customer friendly. It's like, I don't know what
Yeah.
your blog is about. It sounds boring. So, but it's like, it's a constant refresh of your content, which is something that Google and other search providers look at. It's like, is this site constantly getting updated? Does it have new content? Is the content on that particular page, is it kind of specific and it has a focus? Because that's also something that Google looks at. You're more the SEO expert than I am. I don't know if can spell it out a little bit more.
The other thing that Google's looking at, when your friend was talking about this, people were still probably stuffing web pages with keywords.
This was even before that.
Yeah.
I feel like this is even before I had heard of Google. Like, this is the late 90s.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Google is looking now they can actually tell if your content is written for a person, right? Versus, if you when I say stuff keywords, I mean at the bottom or somewhere in your web page, you just put a bunch of words like tags or words that you're trying to like boost your search results. But without getting too technical, because it's very easy to use a lot of jargon talking about this, the general idea is a blog post now has to be informative. It should be sort of relevant. And a lot of the best blog posts link to other blog posts, right? So they're very much become sort of...
Or just other websites. It doesn't have to be another blog
other
site.
blog posts. Yeah, they're part of what we call the content experience or the content strategy. And they provide a really flexible way for marketers to more easily typically update content, right? A great example, we both worked in the entertainment industry, right? And you're humming along and all of a sudden...
Consumer electronics, just to be clear.
Yeah, consumer electronics for entertainment.
Right, I know. But yeah, it could be
for entertainment.
Yeah.
But I was going to say that, all you need to do is have someone pass away, like Frank Sinatra or Olivia Newton-John, and all of a sudden everybody is looking for that music or those movies or whatever. Being able to like quickly create a blog post, which essentially is like almost like a newspaper or news article, and you can say, we mourn the passing of Frank Sinatra, but here's all the great Sinatra movies that are on the Roku platform through our different content providers. Conceptually, like that's how it can work. Your blog sort of part of your site is something that, like you said, is fresh, it's evergreen, it's always updated, things like that.
So you don't have to have a blog, but in my mind, I think it's helpful. So it's mostly marketing. We don't have a blog per se, but we do have the episodes get updated every week. We're including resources. So like we do make updates to the site, and that's what helps drive
that's
traffic.
A good point.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's not for everybody. Because maybe there's things like, I don't know what to write about. Like sometimes I don't know, I can't think of an example, but there's definitely plenty of examples where it's not the most useful.
We've sort of touched on this area, but you mentioned, if you come to a website and it looks like crap or it's really nothing clicks, broken links, what are some of those things you think people should focus on to create that great first impression?
The overall customer experience, if you have to have kind of in your mind clear paths. And so that usually comes through as in your navigation, whether it's a primary main navigation, or sometimes you have navigation in your footer at the bottom of the page, which you need to have that to guide people, but it might not be the most important thing.
Yeah. What about things like, visuals, making sure that language is, we talked in other episodes about like messaging and target
Speaking to
audience.
your customer.
And
yeah, there's that. Well, so I would also say there's almost like there's a visual hierarchy. A lot of times you
Hmm.
might see a primary, like a large hero image with a headline, maybe like three things underneath it, then more granular underneath it. Like it does feel like there's again, a hierarchy. And if you keep in mind for that homepage anyway, you've got a goal of what you want people to do. Every page is going to have a goal. And I think it's helpful to have consistency. So if you have multiple products, you don't want your product pages to be totally different from each other. I mean, you can have
Mm.
variety, but you might not you don't want it to look so different that it's confusing. So having some consistency, navigation, the layouts to be consistent, make sure things are working properly. And then we've also talked about, you and I, as we've worked together, is a link sent, which is driving people to that next action. Learn more can be fine, but it's not great. It's pretty broad. If you could be more specific about, I can't even think of the imperative case is what we used to do, which is like learn,
Well, or
teach,
we say
go,
explore products or explore
explore.
this
Exactly.
or
We try to be a little bit more specific to where,
yeah.
so explore all products,
So
read, I don't know, subscribe. Like it's imperative case. It's a verb. It's a command.
right,
And then it implies the thing that you're going to do next. Like, what is this
right.
button going to do?
This
Um,
it's a
Click
signpost.
here is the
Yeah,
worst. It's like,
or just
I don't
click.
even know. Click me. Yeah. I don't know if anybody does that anymore, but that used to actually drive to our Adobe's free PDF reader or Acrobat reader, because so many people would have like, you don't have Acrobat, or click here, and it like that was a backlink, what you were just alluding to on the blog post, kind of referencing each other. We got tons of traffic that way, and it was literally, if you do click me or something like that, it would go to adobe.com. So crazy.
All right.
Where were we? So user experience, some of the things about the layout,
We were talking about first
clear call to
impressions.
action, clear call to action. So you have to be clear about what your message is. And also that sort of orients people, like, are they in the right place? Are you in the
Right.
right, you have the wrong, are your visuals engaging? Is your tone speaking to your target audience? It's like, it's customers, they are clients, they are patients, they are like, there are different words depending on the line of business that you're in. So making sure that you're just sort of speaking the language that your customers speak in. Don't call something because internally you call it a certain thing. Like, nobody
Right.
knows that. Yeah.
And actually that's a little bit sidebar marketing here. Don't organize your website based on your company. Back in the olden days, websites used to be created based on the business organizations, right? And now I think, luckily, for the most part, people are really thinking about the customer. And like we just said, the journey, the target audience, where are they going to go? Where there's more integration of those different pieces of content, those different stories, it comes together. It doesn't look as much like the company.
I will say though, you got to test everything, because long time ago, um, I was at a software company that we acquired a bunch of different companies, and the companies that we acquired had very strong brand equity with their names. And so on our website, it was like you could search by product. It was like a product drop down. It was basically all these companies that we acquired because that was their flagship product at the same time. And the head of marketing was like, we need to be doing this role based. It's like, who are you? Are you a developer? Are you a tester? Do you do change management? Are you a project manager? And so whole site got rearranged to be by audience, which seems intuitive, right? It's kind of like, oh yeah, I am a project manager, so therefore I'm going to look at what project management tools they have. Our customers were so confused because they knew these brand names so well that
Right.
we ended up doing both. So it was almost
Okay.
like the people that knew us, they were searching by product, but the people that weren't as familiar, they were looking at it by role.
Yep. Exactly. You could be looking for a category solution, and solution marketing in a combination with product marketing makes a lot of sense. There's
Yeah.
often
What other things?
speaking of brand, I remember a lot of times people would do a test where they remove any words and say, does this look like us? Like, does this represent our brand? Right. And there are, color choices in combination, the balance, all of that. You're like, oh, that looks like a blah. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that people don't think about it, but it needs to all work together for that.
Using Squarespace as an example, it's just like it's super easy to you can drum something up pretty quickly where you're like, you could just scan at existing templates overall, which already have fonts, colors, whatnot predetermined. You can customize later, but it's a good starting point. And then from there you go, okay, I like that. And this is good for, I'm a, personal trainer, and this one's good for, services. So this is a good template for me to use. And then you would go in and then you decide, I don't really like that brown. I want to make it, black. And you can go through, change that. You can change, I don't want the headline font to look like this. I want to change it to something else. And it lets you do that, customize all your images and all that. And then you're kind of ready to go. It's pretty quick, I feel like, especially if you're a freelancer, like it's, because you and I spent a lot of time like figuring out what we wanted to have. So, but it still is pretty quick to pull the whole thing together.
So we touched on a couple things, common pitfalls that people need to keep in mind, right? Things to watch out for, making sure your site works for mobile, right? Which most likely
I was like,
means
what pitfalls? Yeah. That was a pitfall.
Yeah, and
It's just
that
looking at it.
SEO friendly. Yeah, check it. I mean, that's perfect. Like you look at it on your phone.
On your phone.
We had that experience a couple weeks ago. We had a layout, and when we looked at it on our phone, we're like,
whoops.
"Oh, that looks
bad.
terrible."
Gotta change that.
Contrast, things like that. I think the other thing,
actually, that's a good point. There's things about
ADA
people who are visually impaired. You have to have enough contrast. You have to make sure. I forget what else. Usually that's built in with the platforms too, right?
Yeah.
It might tell you.
It might tell you sometimes you can choose colors though that don't have a high enough contrast rate to meet that requirement.
True. Yeah.
Like fonts on color and stuff like that. I guess the other thing, and it's not so much with these like solutions like we talked about Squarespace and WordPress and Shopify,
Wix,
but
Shopify.
It is possible that you can just mess up the templates, if you will, to the point where they're slow loading. You don't finish building links out, your navigation. So you want to always make sure you don't have broken links, that your pages all load quickly. Speed is a factor that Google and customers take in mind. Yeah, exactly. And then I think it's always good to reach out. There's forums online. You can post stuff if you're having trouble. Like we said, we use AI to help with some things, and we had to have it tune it. There's also just reaching out to people in your network for help or advice or whatever.
Or you can ask the hosts.
Or you can ask us.
Yes, it's mostlymarketing.com/ask-the-hosts, which I didn't clear that with you, Simon. Having hyphens in the URL, I don't know if that's legitimate or not.
You mean in an email address?
No, it's our website.
Ask hyphen. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. I know I've just a small anecdote. We used to have to name things where the CEO could type them in and they didn't have to switch their keyboard layouts for the extra characters or whatever. So it had to all be on the default keyboard, let's say, of your Android without clicking a button to get the exclamation point or the dash or whatever.
Yeah.
Stuff on the web is always changing. So even though it's not your primary business to be a web person, if you will, it's good to stay on top of trends. It's good to maybe, especially in the area of search where Google is constantly changing how they work.
Yeah.
That's going to inform changes that you need to make to your content, to your website. So those are critical if you want the value of search, which we need to do a whole separate show on. Yeah. And then I think about the other thing is, as you look to the future, when you look at these platforms, it's like, what am I going to need down the road, right? How easy does it integrate with email? Do you need e-commerce, right? If you know that out the gate, you want to choose a platform that offers that, different things like that. And some of this you won't know right away, and it's okay.
You're also making me think of another example. So because I'm I'm pretty versed in Squarespace, and I had no Shopify experience. I started with Squarespace for our game platform because it does have e-commerce. But
Mhm.
then what I realized was Shopify has a very strong integration with Klaviyo, which is an email service provider. It's like it's so tightly integrated and sophisticated. Then I ended up moving over to both of those because
Mhm.
it was such a better experience. It's kind of was a drag, but at the same time, I'm like, it's fine. Like I learned.
Yeah,
Yeah,
migrate, man. But I think that if there are integrations and you think down the future, that might be a reason to choose one platform over another to start.
that is true. And many platforms allow you to embed code that allows
Hmm.
you to kind of integrate
Customize.
with yeah, but it's still, but also the integration. So like the CRM that Christina's using, and then we're able to pull in schedules and stuff from that other platform into hers. So yeah. Anything else?
No, but you know what I think the thing is, don't, it's sort of like you just dive in. Like
Yeah,
especially a
exactly.
lot of
Grab
these
a template.
services, yeah, they offer free trials. It's really not that complicated. You can always find a friend who's done it. Certainly, like we're available, but they're very approachable and it's worth it. If you have a business to have that sort of basic digital presence, I think that's really, really important. It
Agreed.
adds so much clout to your brand and
Credibility.
credibility. Yep.
Agreed. All right. Well,
All
I think
right.
that's a good place to stop.
I think
Again,
so
from
too.
tangents to tactics.
It's mostly marketing.
Yep.